It's wild how quickly the mood can change around this team. One minute, you're telling yourself this thing is still alive, still building, and the next, you catch a few quiet signals that hit like a siren, if you know what you're watching. Because today isn't one headline. It's 4 pressure points squeezing the Chargers at the exact same time. And the way they handle it is going to tell us what 2026 is actually going to feel like. There's a decision sitting out there that could change how this offense even breathes. There's a message coming from the offensive line that basically yells enough without ever saying the word. There's a veteran cornerstone on defense weighing his future, while the locker room kind of holds its breath. And there's that post-playoff mirror that showed an uncomfortable truth a lot of people would rather dodge. Be honest, do you trust this franchise to meet this moment? Before we dive in, if you're riding with the Bolt fam, tap like, make sure you're subscribed, and drop your take in the comments. Because this one is going to split people. On paper, the first piece looks like just a coaching move. But you already know this. Switching coordinators isn't a simple name swap. It's rhythm, it's philosophy, it's identity. And right now, the Chargers are in the market for a new offensive coordinator after another wildcard game where the offense looks stuck, tight, heavy, like every single yard had to be ripped out of the ground. For the second straight year, when the lights got brightest, the offense didn't look like it had answers. So the Chargers moved on from Greg Roman. And you can't talk about that without talking about the season they just lived through. This offense fought through a ridiculous amount of injuries up front. The offensive line was shuffling constantly. Guys in, guys out, replacements on top of replacements. You can feel it drive to drive, like nothing came easy. There weren't enough quick gift throws, not enough built-in outlets, not enough easy completions that let Justin Herbert stay on schedule and stay clean. It turned into a fight for every inch, and it leaned way too hard on Herbert needing to do something special just to keep the whole thing afloat. Meanwhile, the reason the Chargers even got into the playoffs with weeks to spare came down to 2 things: the defense playing championship-caliber football, and Herbert overcoming every challenge and finding enough points to win games. And even in those wins, it didn't feel smooth. It didn't feel like the offense was imposing its will. So the big question that hovered over the whole season is still the question now. What was the identity? Week to week, it felt like the Chargers were trying to attack whatever the opponent's weakness was, instead of forcing defenses to deal with what the Chargers do best. In January, that kind of patchwork approach gets exposed fast. That's why you've got a name being floated that fits what this offense has been missing. Jake Peetz, the Seahawks passing game coordinator. He's been around. He's coached in quarterback-friendly environments. He spent time with the Rams as an assistant and pass game specialist. He's worked in systems tied to that Shanahan-style tree, where the goal is clear reads, timing, and easy throws that can turn into chunk plays. And he's coached running backs in a way that emphasizes versatility. Think about that for a second. If you're trying to build around Herbert while still establishing an effective run game, pairing a QB-friendly pass game with creative backfield usage matters. And it's not hard to see why that would get people in the building thinking. If you've got young backs like Omarion Hampton and Kimani Vidal, and you want more than run into a wall on first down, you need someone who can actually build them into the offense as real weapons. There's also the relationship layer, because this league runs on that, whether we like it or not. Peetz is on Mike McDonald's Seahawks staff, and there are connections through the Harbaugh world. Relationships matter in coaching hires. They just do. The Chargers have a massive decision to make, because this can't be cosmetic. It has to be a real shift toward an offense with an identity. One that makes life easier for Herbert, instead of asking him to carry a piano up the stairs every Sunday. And if we're talking about making life easier, that brings us right to the next pressure point, because the offensive line is about to become the front office's obsession, whether they enjoy it or not. The season is over. Another playoff disappointment. A 16-3 loss to the Patriots that felt more like a rerun than a shock. And if there's one unit that sums up how the Chargers got here, it's the offensive line. Everybody knows the Chargers had one of the worst offensive line situations in the league this year. And what made it so brutal is how unique and relentless it was. Both star tackles gone with season-ending injuries. Constant reshuffling at basically every spot. Poor play mixed in with injuries. No cohesion, no chemistry, just survival football. And this is where the conversation gets real for the Bolt fam. This isn't just add depth. This isn't just hope everybody stays healthy. This is about finding true difference makers. Because you don't build a playoff offense on crossed fingers. You build it on protection, consistency, and trust. At center, specifically, an upgrade from Bradley Bozeman feels inevitable. That's why one major name keeps coming up. Tyler Linderbaum. First-round pick out of Iowa. Pro Bowl level center. A staple on Baltimore's offensive line. A guy who understands what it takes to block in the AFC, week after week, against the kind of interior pass rush that ruins your Sunday afternoon. He's been in an offense that demands communication and precision, and that matters when you're trying to keep your franchise quarterback upright. What makes the fit feel even more realistic is the connection. Joe Ortiz was in Baltimore when they drafted Linderbaum. He got to see him up close for 2 seasons. So if Ortiz pushes for it, it's not a blind swing. It's based on first-hand evaluation. And money shouldn't be the excuse this time. The Chargers are sitting on over $100 million in projected cap space going into the offseason. That's real flexibility. Yes, you still have to be smart. You don't want to throw cash around just to feel active. But at some point, modest turns into stuck. The last few off-seasons, the Chargers have been conservative with big deals. You can call it disciplined, you can call it cautious, but you can't stare at this offensive line and pretend bargain shopping is going to fix it. Picture Herbert with a true elite center stabilizing the front, setting protections, keeping the pocket firm on 3rd and long, so you can call real concepts instead of prayers. Picture what that does in the red zone. Picture the confidence boost across the entire offense. That's not fantasy. That's the kind of move that raises the floor immediately. And here's what really matters. What the Chargers do here tells you what they think their window is. If they stay timid, the message is loud. If they get aggressive, they're telling you they believe 2026 can look different. And that belief matters because there's another question hanging in the air, one that hits the locker room right in the chest. Khalil Mack isn't rushing anything. Honestly, that's the most Khalil Mack thing ever. After that season-ending loss in New England, the question popped up immediately. Did we just see Mack in powder blue for the last time? Retirement is an openly discussed topic around him now, and he didn't duck it. He said he'll make a decision based on how he's feeling, how his family is feeling, the vibes. He made it clear he doesn't want to decide in the heat of the moment, especially after a tough loss. He wants to step back and strip the emotion out of it. Let me say this. When a player like that talks that way, it's not noise. It's a real crossroads. Mack turns 35 in February. The mileage is real, but the impact is real too. Even this season, in 12 games, he posted 5.5 sacks and forced 4 fumbles. That's not someone just hanging on. That's someone who can still tilt protection schemes, still mess with timing, still make quarterbacks speed up. And for the Chargers, it goes beyond the stats. This defense played at a championship level. It kept the team afloat when the offense couldn't find oxygen. Mack is part of the backbone, not only because of what he does on Sundays, but because of what he represents in the room. Leadership, standards, edge. You don't replace that with a draft pick and a motivational speech. I know, people will try anyway. If he comes back, the message is simple. We're still chasing something. If he walks away, the loss isn't just production, it's identity. It forces the Chargers to find a new anchor, a new voice, a new presence. That's not easy. That's not quick. and it ties directly into whether this franchise is building something real or just resetting the same story again. Because the truth is, Mack isn't going to stay just to stay. He's going to want to feel a real plan to compete. He's going to want to believe the offense is getting fixed. The protection is getting fixed. The postseason ceiling is getting lifted. That's what makes his decision so heavy this offseason. And that leads into the last piece, the one that hits the hardest, because it's the cleanest diagnosis of why this season ended the way it did. That 16-3 loss to the Patriots wasn't just ugly, it was a summary. Every problem the Chargers battled all season showed up at once. Injuries, offensive line chaos, no offensive answers, a razor-thin margin of error, and Justin Herbert taking punishment behind an undermanned, out-of-position front that at times looked like preseason-level protection against real playoff athletes. Rashawn Slater was lost for the season early in August. Joe Alt battled through injuries before season-ending ankle surgery in early November. Trey Pipkins missed games and played injured in others. Omarion Hampton missed time and never fully looked right when he returned. Najee Harris had season-ending injured reserve early. That's not a survivable situation in the modern NFL. It doesn't absolve anyone, but it explains why the offense looked like it was playing from behind mentally, even before the score got out of hand. This is where the debate gets loud, because when the Chargers lose like that, the face of the franchise takes the heat. Herbert will get blamed. He already is. People will point to the 0-3 playoff record and act like that's the whole truth. But that's lazy. 3 games don't define a quarterback. The sample size of Herbert's career says he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. There's no reason to suddenly act like he can't win. The bigger issue is the Chargers haven't built a playoff-ready offensive ecosystem around him. The offense never found cohesion under Harbaugh and Roman. It struggled to build a consistent passing game, and even young pieces like Ladd McConkey had a noticeable dip in production in year 2. That doesn't happen in a vacuum. That's what it looks like when the system doesn't adapt and the protection doesn't hold. Meanwhile, the defense held up its end. Jesse Minter's unit gave the Chargers chances. They developed young talent. They played physical. They played smart. If Minter stays, that side of the ball is a foundation you can trust. But football doesn't work when one side is dragging the other uphill. So yeah, the uncomfortable truth is the Chargers entered the playoffs with basically no margin for error. That's not sustainable. And when the first crack showed up, the whole thing collapsed. But there's a hopeful truth sitting right next to it. This team might feel farther away than it really is. Health matters. Adding talent matters. Rebuilding the offensive line matters. Finding an offensive coordinator who gives Herbert a real identity matters. If those things happen, the window is still open. And that's what makes this offseason so defining. This isn't about tweaking. It's about deciding what the Chargers want to be when January hits again. The window is still open, but it won't wait forever. So I want to hear from you, both fam. What's the single most urgent decision if you want the Chargers to flip this story? OC hire, a major offensive line investment, or figuring out what happens with Khalil Mack? Hit like, subscribe, and jump in the comments, because this is the kind of off-season conversation that tells you whether we're headed for a real turnaround or another year of almost.